Hello, and welcome to my live. This is Peter Courier from Solai Coffee, founder of a mission-based company trying to streamline the value equation when it comes to coffee, working directly with farmers and consumers. So we are live and we are going to be talking about the current situation of coffee in Kenya. So let's give it just a few minutes to get some people to join. We are going to be talking about the current situation of coffee in Kenya. Been getting a lot of questions about what's going on in Kenya, about the Kenyan coffee. Of course, you know that we changed guard. We have a new president as of 2022, which means there are a couple of reforms that are taking place. And the situation has been a little bit confusing to people who love Kenyan coffee, people who do business with Kenyan coffee. And I just wanted to give you my take on what's going on in Kenya when it comes to coffee. I just want to let you know that we are live on Instagram, we are live on Facebook, and we are live on YouTube. Wanted to get this message across multiple social medias, just to give my opinion and actually to give you an update of what's going on in Kenya. So the value distribution chain is usually complicated when it comes to coffee. There is a lot of processes that are involved from bean to cup. From that moment when you plant the seed, you nurture that seed to a tree, and that tree starts bearing fruits. And once that tree gives you those fruits, there is the processing that goes into place. Getting the seed from the cherry. There are different processes in between, which can term as the pulping stage, where you remove the outer skin. Then there is the fermentation, and then there you can either decide to dry it, which is called the natural process, or wet washing. And then there is the dry milling, and then after the dry milling, now there is selling it to the roasters, or taking it to the roaster, and then the roasting process begins. And now you're getting closer to the consumer. And the person who is closest now to admiring the work of the farmer, admiring the work of the roaster, is actually you, the person who drinks the coffee. The way you are brewing it, and the way you are storing it, and the way you are actually trying to taste what the coffee offers. So in Kenya, we are ranked the 16th in the world when it comes to coffee production. As of the statistics of 2023, we produced 40,000 metric tons of coffee. And the biggest producer, being Brazil, is doing about 44 million metric tons of coffee. So it's quite a significant difference. And majority of the coffee that is coming from Kenya, of course, comes from small-scale farmers, not the big estates. So the small-scale farmers have a lot to contribute to producing coffee and providing the coffee to the market. So when I say we produced 40,000 metric tons of coffee in 2023, what does that mean when you compare to other years? So fact, in 1989, Kenya produced a record-breaking quantity of coffee, 128,000 metric tons of coffee. So when you look at that statistic and you look at where we are right now, we have gone down 5 times, right? Instead of increasing our produce, we are reducing year by year. Of course, there are a couple of things that have affected that. One of them being global warming, where it's tougher, it's more expensive to produce coffee with the situation that faces us when it comes to global warming and climate change. But the reason I am on this live is to tell you the current situation of Kenyan coffee right now, because I've had people reaching out, businesses reaching out and saying that they are not finding Kenyan coffee. They are reading in the papers that there is a situation in Kenya, and the situation right now in Kenya is they are changing the way the businesses who import or export coffee from Kenya to the diaspora market. Fact, Kenya produces one of the best Arabica coffees in the world. It's high up there with the Ethiopian coffees, with the Costa Rica coffee, with the specialty coffees. So that's a fact. And then when you look at the price that the coffee fetches for the farmer, it does not translate to the price that is paid by the consumer. So last year, when we got the new government, there was some changes, some reforms that were made, and our dry millers, who are usually the ones who have set up, the businesses to help the farmer get through that dry milling process, which is now removing the outer husk of a coffee bean to green beans, what we now usually roast. So those millers were the ones who are doing the representation of the farmers at the auction. So Kenyan coffee is bought at the auction, or you can export it directly from the miller. But if you don't have a direct buyer, that means you have to go to the auction. So the miller, most of the time, was the marketer and is the person who was representing you at the auction. So the government created a reform where they wanted to separate those roles from, the miller, not to be the marketer. And what ended up happening is they canceled a lot of the licenses for these millers. And now the people who are expecting the millers to go and represent them at the auction, they're not getting that service. And we are stuck. So we have a lot of coffee in the warehouses because the millers themselves are the ones who had very good relationships with the big buyers who are in the diaspora. And in diaspora, I mean the US, I mean, the Europe, Middle East, and Asia, because we export majority of our coffee, 95% of our coffee. So we are not we consume tea more than we consume coffee. So once those reforms came into place, we had limited representation of marketers at the auction. And these marketers are the ones that were helping these big buyers get the coffee from the auction. So it's a very confusing situation, because you expect that when you have a very high quality bean, or a very high quality coffee, you're expecting people to come and scramble for it. But here's the thing: because of the situation that was there before, there was a lot of price fixing. That's what I can call it, where people who are the importers who are coming to the auction had relationships with these marketers, and they were capping the price, right? They were capping the price at a given rate range, right? So they would talk to each other before they went to the auction, and they would max the price at, like, we are going to buy the highest quality of coffee at $5, right? And when I talk about price fixing, a lot of people do not understand it, because they look at the price and they're like, okay, I think $5 is a good price. When I look at it from, a business perspective, and even from a farmer's perspective. Mind you, sometimes that $5, by the time it's getting to the farmer, it has shrunk almost by 50%. But what does price fixing do to the farmer? It means that if I come into a room and I am capping the price at $5 for the highest quality coffee that is being offered at the auction, that means any coffee after it, right? So let's say, for example, when you're talking about the Specialty Coffee Association score, which is usually at 100, from 0 to 100, and anything above 80, between 80 and 100 is deemed as specialty coffee. So if I'm buying the highest score, which would be, let's say, for example, a coffee that's scored 95 out of 100, and I'm capping that price at $5, what does it do to the farmer who wasn't able to meet that score, maybe 80? So that means their coffee is going to be priced at a way lower price. So that's what it means by price fixing. So when the government started doing these reforms, it's almost like there is a rebellion now from the buyers who are involved in the price fixing. So the farmer has produced the coffee, but the buyers are striking. They're not coming to buy the coffee. I don't know. They're trying to punish, I think, the government, or to show them that, we are going to dictate the price. And if we are not going to be part of dictating the price, then we are not going to buy the coffee from you. And what ends up happening is they move to another region. So they would probably move now from Kenya and go to another country. Maybe I don't want to mention names, but they would go to another country that doesn't have those strict reforms. So there is a very big push by the government to do direct trade, which is what Solai Coffee is doing, where we are getting the buyer to get as close as possible to the producer without having so many intermediaries in the value chain. So direct trade today is the solution to the problems that a lot of farmers across the globe, the problems that majority of the farmers across the globe, not just Kenya, it's the solution to those problems. Because when you are looking at the costs of production of coffee, you're looking at things like inflation, right? The prices of fuel are going up. That means if you have mechanized your processes, you're having to pay much more than you were when inflation was lower. When you're looking at global warming or climate change, when you don't have enough rainfall, that means you're going to get a smaller yield, right? If you're looking at stabilizing your yield, then that means you have to find a substitute for that rainfall, which means you have to invest in irrigation. When we have global warming and new pests and diseases cropping up, that means you also have to invest much more money to control those diseases. What the intermediaries do not do, they do not usually factor in the cost of production majority of the time. They look at the C market. So when I'm talking about the C market, look at it as how you buy your stocks. A stock is determined by the number of people who are trusting that stock, the number of people who are coming in and saying, hey, I cannot buy this stock for more than this amount of money, right? So the population, the people who are actually investing in that stock, determine the price of the stock without looking at how much the company is spending, to, let's say, for example, it's a software company, to create that software. So we have the same thing with coffee, where we have a C market, and it's determined by the buyers coming in and saying, I'm not going to buy the coffee more than a certain price. That works when you're dealing with commercial coffee, because commercial coffee doesn't really address quality versus specialty coffee. Specialty coffee takes a lot of resources when it comes to time and money to make sure that you're meeting the quality that the Specialty Coffee Association has set, the quality that your consumers want you to stick at. So when you don't recognize that cost of production as an intermediary, as a broker, and you say every time, every year when I'm going to market, I am going to take this margin, and it has to be constant. What happens to the farmer who is having to pay a little bit more because of inflation, because of the things that they do not have control over, like global warming, like the wars that we have in the world, when it comes to cost of shipping, those kind of things. So we are in a fix, because the people, we produce coffee, but we don't consume a lot of it. So we are depending on the external markets to come and buy the coffee that we have put so much money, so much time, so much love, so much passion. We are hoping that we are expecting them to come and recognize that. But because we cannot represent ourselves in the market, because we don't have access to that market, because it's not a local market, then the farmer is left to be at the mercy of these intermediaries. So Solai comes in, and because of the policies that have been put into place, we are taking advantage of the fact that we can be able to export the coffee ourselves without going through the auction, and educating the consumers so that they can see the big picture. As I said, it takes a lot to get that bean to cup, but the education, there are a lot of people who don't even know that coffee comes from a tree. They just drink the coffee, and they drink it every day, and they drink so much of it, and they are willing to pay the price. But if they are not educated on what it takes for that farmer to get that bean to cup, then they're not going to make formal decisions, right? So our work as Solai is to come and tell you the story of the farmer, because we are farmers ourselves. Myself, I was born and raised on a coffee farm, so everything I know about coffee has been a life teaching, because I have planted it, I have processed it, and now I'm on this other end of the business with a very big team, trying to educate the end consumer on what it takes to get that bean to cup and to meet the quality that they're expecting us to do, to produce. So we are under the mercy of you buying the coffee directly from businesses like ours that do recognize that the farmer is spending a lot of money, and the money needs to trickle down to that farmer, because the farmer also has a lot of responsibilities, right? When you're running a farm, you cannot run it by yourself. You cannot run it with a team of 2 people. You require a lot of people to come and help you in cultivation of that coffee, right? So those people are expecting to get their livelihood from the work that they're doing for you. So if you're producing that coffee and you're not able to even fetch more money than you invested in the coffee, what happens is that you start underpaying the workers, you start jeopardizing the quality, and one of the biggest reasons that we are seeing that decline, remember I started off by saying in 1989, we were producing 128,000 metric tons of coffee. In 2023, we produced 40,000 metric tons of coffee. We are dividing that production by 5 instead of going 5-fold up, because people are starting to turn away from coffee. Our generation, my generation, doesn't want to do anything to do with coffee. So they're not even interested in inheriting these businesses. And if they find themselves in a situation where they have to go back to the farms, they are opting to go into other businesses. It takes about 3 years for that seed to get to a tree state, and then for you to start picking the fruits from that tree. Remember, coffee is a fruit. So if somebody comes in and says, I don't want anything to do with coffee, I'm going to cut down all these coffee bushes, these coffee trees, and I'm going to plant another tree like avocado or macadamia nuts, that means they have to wait for another three or so years to actually start getting money from that tree. So we are actually eating into ourselves, right? So a lot of people are turning away from coffee farming because it's not a lucrative business. It's a break-even business. It takes so much to produce coffee, but if you're just breaking even, you're not even able to contribute to your community, then that means that it's a hobby business. The problem is not the end consumer. I know for you, when you go to Starbucks, when you go to Dunkin' Donuts, when you go to your local mom and pop, you pay the price. And it's usually pretty uniform across the board, right? Or maybe some of the coffee shops that are doing good and doing right by the farmer, they are trying to educate you and tell you, hey, this is why we are not selling our coffee at $3. That's why we are putting our coffee at $5, because we understand that the farmer needs to be paid, and they need to be paid for the quality of coffee that they produced. They need to be paid based on the cost of production, not based on what somebody in the market is dictating. I cannot wake up one day and say, oh, I feel like this coffee needs to be $2. What if the cost of production was $3? How are you expecting that you're going to get that coffee tomorrow when you go back to the market? So those are the things that we are talking about: educating the end consumer, educating the businesses that do not have that opportunity to go as far as Kenya, to go as far as Colombia, to go as far as Brazil, to go and buy the coffee. So they are depending on these big importers. Big importers, remember I talked about price fixing. Price fixing doesn't only happen at the sea market level. It also happens at the auction level. Remember, we sell our Kenyan coffee can only be sold in 2 ways. Either you have a direct export license, where you take your coffee to the dry mill and then you are able to put it in a container through the sea to your end buyer, right? And the other way is there is an auction system where people go and display their coffees. There is a cupping session. You come and cup the coffee, and based on your preference, then you can put a price on it. So the price fixing that I was talking about is no matter how good the coffee is. Let's say, for example, I cup a coffee, and in my mind, I know this is one of the most quality cups I have tried, maybe from different regions. And I feel that that cup, I can be able to sell it to the end consumer at $10. Why should I come back and say I'm going to buy the coffee at $3? Who takes the $7? The auction is taking $3 that you're going to pay the farmer. The government is going to take some taxes from it. The marketer is going to get a percentage from it. So by the time it's getting back to the farmer, it's $1. So you are left with $7 to pay the taxes, right? Which you are actually passing on to your end consumer. And the farmer is the one who is left with almost nothing. Actually, we in Kenya, we have started nicknaming the coffee farming business as a hobby business. And most of the people who are actually farming the coffee are of an average age of 60, 65, old men. So this, our fathers, that's what I'm saying, with old men, my old man. So they're the ones who have been farming the coffee, and they're like, I'm too old now to even go to any other business. Let me just continue supporting my community the way I can by, if I'm breaking even and I'm bringing in, some of these farm workers who do not have anything else to do, because farming is the business of the day in my community. So if you are not farming that coffee, then it means you're taking a lot of people out of employment, and they're willing to just break even just so that they can sustain their community. They cannot live a decent livelihood. So the cost of the coffee at the consumption side is not matching the cost, the reward that the farmer is getting. So that's the problem with price fixing. That's the problem that the current government of Kenya is trying to fix. But it's almost like they have gotten themselves in a hole, because the people who are actually, exporting or coming to Kenya to buy that coffee, to bring it to all these coffee shops that we have in the US, all these coffee shops that we have in London and Sweden and Australia, are the people who are actually part of the problem, because they're the ones who are price fixing. And when you come and say that you are going to break that norm, and then these people come and say, okay, if you're not going to allow us to participate in this auction the way we were participating in it, then we are going to move to another place. And then the farmer suffers. So you hear the farmer today saying, I would rather be getting the $2 that I was getting rather than having my coffee sitting in a warehouse, right? Sitting in a warehouse for a whole year because buyers are not coming to buy that coffee. So I just wanted to jump on these platforms to just explain what the current situation of coffee is in Kenya, the problems that we are facing as farmers, and how we have been tied in this hole, because the big importers of coffee, the ones that are representing the small scale roasters in the US, the ones that are representing these coffee shops in the US, in Canada, and across the globe, wherever coffee is consumed, are not doing good for us. They are just minding about their profits, their pockets, and not worrying about the farmer. And when you're talking about Kenyan coffee and somebody saying that, hey, I'm going to move to another country if you're not going to dance to my tune, then that also means that they're holding the end consumer hostage. Because what I'm hearing now from this other end is that big importer is telling that that roaster that is buying from them, that coffee shop that is buying from them, that it's a mess in Kenya. We are waiting for them to figure themselves out. No, we are waiting for you to recognize. I'm talking now to the big importers. We are waiting for you to recognize the issues that the farmers are going through when you come in and act the way you are acting, price fixing, and determining that Panama coffee can come to the US market and sell at $10, scoring the same, when I'm talking about the quality of the coffee, scoring the same, 95 out of 100, selling at $10, or you are willing to pay the farmer in Panama $10, but again, going to Kenya and paying the farmer $3. Why is that $7? Where is that $7 going? So we are encouraging our consumers, our roasters, and specifically our roasters, because they are the closest to our consumers, right? We are encouraging them to study the current situation, to know what goes on in the auction, to know how the value is being distributed across the global chain, the value chain, to understand who is getting what from that bin, right? So we just have to be cognizant of that, because if we continue with this trend, right, we are going to phase out coffee farming in Kenya. And the moment we stop farming coffee in Kenya, that means there are a lot of people who are going to go out of employment. There's a lot of losses that are going to be experienced by our farmers who have set up factories, which are not usually cheap. It takes a lot of resources to put together a coffee business where you are able to process it with a quality that our consumers demand as Kenyan producers. Just understand that process. Understand what Solai is trying to do. Ask questions as much as you can. See how you can even, join us in this journey by going to boots on the ground, talking to the farmers, asking them these questions. How much are you getting from this coffee that you're selling? How much are you putting into the coffee? Does it sustain you? What does it mean for the kids that you are raising? Does it mean that you are trying thick and thin to push your kids to get into other jobs but not to come back to the farms? So Solai Coffee is a direct trade business, and basically what that means is we are addressing the gap that has been created by the by the intermediaries, by going back to the farmer, making sure that they're not only making back their money, the money that they spent in production. They're not only making a profit, but they are also in a position to contribute to the community. They are in a position to go into a fundraiser for someone who needs to go to school and contribute some money for somebody else to benefit from the coffee, because it's a community product. That's how I put it. It's a community product that takes a lot of unity. It takes a lot of people to come together to make sure that you're producing coffee in the best way possible. So if you would like to learn more about our business model and to learn about the gaps that we have, what we are experiencing as coffee farmers, what we are experiencing as coffee exporters, as farmers, or coffee importers as on this other end of the business, please send us an email, coffee@solaicoffee.com, or you can reach us through this social media platform, and we are more than happy to educate you. We are more than happy to give you the story of the coffee farmer so that you can be in a better position to also educate your end consumer. And it can also give you an upper hand when you are choosing the person that you're buying your coffee from. You are asking the right questions. And at the end of the day, if our consumers are informed, I believe that they're going to make the right choices. Again, my name is Peter Courier, and I am the founder of Solai Coffee. I am a farmer, second generation farmer. I'm still farming in Kenya. I am still investing in training through my team, training the farmers in my community on how to produce the best coffees, training the youth on things that they can do to reduce the cost of production, how they can go and help their parents in terms of using modern farming practices, of course, to reduce the cost of production. And on this end, they are really looking up to me to find the right price, so that if they are going back to the farms as young men, as youth, they are assured that they are also going to live a sustainable livelihood. They are assured that they are going to raise their families, and they are also assured that they are able to create a future for the next generation that is coming. So reach out to us, support us, by buying a packet of coffee. When you buy that coffee, it does not only pay the farmer. There are other things that we have in play that we are really trying to execute, like feeding farm workers, contributing to the education of the people who we work with, right? If a coffee farm worker doesn't have the enough resources to take their kids to school, are we able to give them that boost? If you're breaking even, then it's going to be a stretch. So every time you buy coffee from us, it means a lot, not just to the farmer, but also to the community. It also means a lot to the future of coffee production in Kenya. Otherwise, I want to thank you so much for coming on to my live and for interacting with us, for showing us the love, for showing us the support. If you're not following us on this platform, so go ahead and follow us. We are going to continue highlighting the story of the coffee farmer. We are going to continue to be transparent on the things that we are doing for our communities, and we are going to continue educating you on ethical buying when it comes to coffee production. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your weekend.